Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. This is really exciting to have you here talking about your journey. So I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourself. So what do you do? What are you here to talk about?
Thanks. So great to be here too. So my name is Andrew Jack. I'm a journalist with the Financial Times. Worked at the FT for about 30 years in all sorts of roles as a reporter, as an editor, a journalist looking at corporate and policy and politics issues in the UK, as a foreign correspondent in France and in Russia, somebody following the pharmaceutical and healthcare sector globally, launching a series of newsletters, and in my current role for the last 5 years as education editor. So a mixture of writing about education trends around the world and also overseeing various special projects we have, including a program offering free access to secondary schools around the world to the FT.
Amazing. Well, I think all the schools will be very pleased to know this who are watching. And you're currently based in New York, is that right?
That's right. I moved here in November last year. So I've lived, as I say, in several countries over the years. And yeah, I thought it was time for a new adventure. So here I am as the FT increasingly tries to grow its role and reporting and readership in North America and beyond.
Amazing. Okay, so we're going to start by going back to when you were 16 years old, if that's okay. So what were you like at school? What subjects did you enjoy? Did you actually know that what you do now as a job, did you know that that existed?
Yeah, I mean, I think journalism as a job was something I knew about, and I already was very interested in being part of. So outside studies, and this is sort of general advice as well for people I think interested in going into journalism, do it, practice it. So I was already doing some writing for the school, had a magazine and an annual report and stuff like that. I was actively reading and listening. I used to listen to BBC, the Radio 4, news and analysis programs in particular. And then in school, in subjects, I was particularly interested in subjects including geography, which was the one of my A levels, and then the subject I went to study at university. Why? Because it embraced lots of different things, economics, social trends, policy, climate change. We were discussing all of those things, kind of the interdisciplinary nature of the world, and that always inspired me. So that drew me to continuing to study that, and also into journalism as a career.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's come in useful in all the different countries that you visited as well, knowing exactly where they are on the map. But that will be so interesting for so many students to hear that if you go and study geography, you can absolutely go and become a journalist. You don't actually have to study writing kind of from school upwards.
No, I mean, writing, well, certainly for text-based journalism, there's no doubt writing is absolutely fundamental, to write clearly. Of course, increasingly in journalism, there's lots of other skills. We talk there's podcasts, there's visual journalism, of course, broadcasting, but also increasingly, for example, data journalism. So there's a huge demand for people who can code and can understand data. And that instead is another area that a lot of geographers have increasingly gone into. Yeah, many went into cartography, traditional map making or urban planning, things like that. But many more have gone into a huge range of roles in technology companies and other areas where geomapping is important, satellite information, as well as many other different sorts of subjects that people follow in their careers after university. Because I think one thing to stress is obviously that nothing is definitive, particularly when you're young, and you really could study any subject largely and then follow up and reskill and do different things later. So there's very few jobs or subjects that kind of lead it just in a single direction, or that would actually set you up for life even in a single career.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So tell us about the first steps that you took into the industry. So what actually happened when you transitioned from studying?
Yeah, well, so as I said, journalism was always one of the number of career options I was looking at. And so when I went on after school to university, I continued to be very active in student journalism. There was a university newspaper and magazine. I started also doing some freelance writing for professional publications and so on. I lived in the States at the start of my career for a couple of years, and there as well, I was starting to report. So it's really, again, about practice. That was the key thing, actually doing it, showing that, you know, you could identify stories, you could sell them, if you like, to different publications or outlets, you could get them published. They looked good, and, you know, building up a portfolio over time, I think, is then ultimately obviously what gets you hired and gets you ahead. That and a mixture of, if you do go for an interview, you know, coming up with a whole series of ideas that could be articles that you'd be producing if you were hired. So then I started sort of writing freelance for, amongst others, the Financial Times directly, and one thing led to another. You know, they obviously liked my work, and eventually invited me to join initially as a graduate trainee.
So you've done a variety of different things in the kind of media space, right? What are the different skills that you think are very important for young people, aside from practicing, you know, the actual practice, I suppose, of writing? What other skills do you think that young people should be building up now in order to be able to make themselves more hireable if this is the space that they want to go into?
Well, I think in journalism, it starts with, I'd like to think, values. You know, you should be curious, fascinated by the world, trying to understand what's happening, identifying sort of new issues, being very rigorous. Actually, you know, being in this world of fake news, actually making sure that you really are verifying that, you know, what you report is factual. So you've got to be quite assertive, you've got to be questioning all the time. And then you've got to be very flexible, good under pressure, because, you know, journalism is about deadlines. And if you're not delivering your story or your video or your radio broadcast by the time that it has to be edited, prepared, and then produced, published, put out there, broadcast, whatever, it's no good at all. So you've got to be very good at both collecting, verifying, and then producing to tight deadlines and to the length, duration, the format that's required. So I think those are some of the key things. Of course, if you like, if the values, I would say, of the key values have stayed unchanged, you know, that desire for objectivity, for looking for the big picture, for writing well. Of course, as I said earlier, the thing that really has changed is the technology behind it. So, you know, it used to be largely print. The FT is now very much a multimedia organization with all sorts of outputs, video, audio, interactive graphics, presence on social media, and so on. So the work cycle's changed, the sort of materials you work with, the way in which you present have all evolved. And clearly, sort of people who are interested in this field have to be flexible, willing to learn new skills, platforms, approaches to communicate your journalism.
What are the other areas that young people might not know exist in your business?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you look at the FT, of course, there's lots of journalists, and journalists mean different things. It could be, as I said, data analysts and reporters. It could be those who are specialists in audio or um, visual related sort of formats. There are reporters who are out in the field gathering information and writing, but there's also editors and sub-editors who are more desk-based, reflecting on the mix of what they'll produce, and editing, fact checking, and so on. So there's a whole bunch of different sorts of roles within the newsroom. And then, of course, on the social media side, so kind of post production or broadcast or print, if you like, there's of course an ever greater role for people thinking about how you engage a wider readership, both to make them aware of what's been done, but also to try and encourage debate and interaction with your readers. And then that's just in the, if you like, the journalism, the editorial space, because of course the FT and other media outlets also have, you know, large and increasingly significant technologists, product teams, coders, commercial teams selling advertising or subscription. We have a big conference team putting on big events online and in person. There's sort of general administration, there's finance, there's legal. So, you know, in almost any career or employer, there's a whole bunch of different possibilities. And sometimes people move between, sometimes people might carve out their niche or their career or work for a number of years in one and then move to another employer. But, it's like with, for example, health is way more than simply being a doctor or a nurse. The NHS is one of the largest employers in the UK, as you know, and there's many, many different sort of roles in management, in administration, in legal, and so on. So, you have to sort of dig down deep and really think through and try to talk to lots of different people to understand what their specific role is and how many other roles and opportunities there might be in different organizations. So it's partly thinking about, if you like, a function or a role that you might be interested in doing. And then it's also partly thinking about the employer more generally, and are they offering a variety of interesting opportunities for promotion, for shifting to new areas or countries or skills? Are they a good employer in terms of conditions and wages and opportunities? So as I say, whether you're interested in a specific organization or you're interested in a sort of theme or a function, there's lots of different places and ways to fulfill that potential.
And then finally, I know that the Financial Times has so many amazing initiatives for young people, like the FT News School, for example. Is there anything that you just wanted to highlight to any of the people watching?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I'd encourage people to read the FT. It can sound intimidating, but actually we make a lot of effort to make the language and the structure clear. The variety of content is huge. It's not just about finance or business. It's about politics, about policy, world affairs, culture, social issues. There's pretty much everything in there in different formats. As I said, articles in print and online, but also video and pod and charts and data and so on. Specifically, I think reading the FT and other high quality media is really valuable, whatever you choose to go on and do. As I mentioned, we oversee a free program, so any secondary school actually around the world can get pretty much full free access to the FT. So I'd encourage you to do that and try it out. It can be helpful in lessons, and it can also be helpful in thinking about future careers. If you go to our site, we do a lot of reporting, of course, on different organizations, employers, companies. So if you're interested in particular sectors, employers, whatever it might be, the FT is a great place to then do a bit of research, read some articles about what's going on, think about, therefore the implications of what those sorts of jobs, roles, employers might involve. And then if somebody was coming in to visit the school from a different career organization, if you had a chance to do some sort of internship, or if you applied for a job or a scholarship or whatever with an employer, then reading some of this relevant content first so that you've got some good questions and you show you've done a bit of research is, I think, really valuable. And finally, we're doing some content specifically targeted at schools, including later this month, after your great event, we'll both have a report called The World of Work and our own free webinar for an hour and a half, where you've got a chance to hear and ask questions of experts, both about particular career sectors, but also about general skills in terms of application letters, CV writing, how to perform well in interview, how to kind of adapt to the workplace. So lots of resources, keep them out, keep an eye out for them, enjoy them, follow them and use them.
Oh my God, so much tangible stuff there. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day. Enjoy New York.